introduction. First of all, let me thank my friend Victor for the kind invitation and also all the organizing committee for this nice meeting. So my first talk is about Ovation. Actually, I want to give you an overview on all the polymer-based technology, not only Ovation. And these are my disclosure for that talk. And the point is that we have different EVAR technology, different platform. The traditional one is the self-expanding stent design. And then we have two platforms based on polymer. That polymer is always the same, is PEG, is a synthetic, non-biodegradable polymer, widely used in other fields of medicine, is highly biocompatible. And we have two different endografts. Actually, on the market, there is just one at that moment, worldwide, which is the second one I'm going to present. The first one is Nelix. Nelix has a CE mark approved in 2013 with a nice idea, very simple to implant, just two stent grafts provided with the endobex filled of polymer. And so in this way, you have a kind of anatomical fixation because you have the sac, the aneurysmal sac filled of polymer, and then everything should be in place just because of this anatomical fixation. Good result in first clinical reports. However, after more liberal indication, the use of this device became very debatable because of migration. Actually, the point is that this anatomical fixation was not enough. We need an active fixation for that endograft. And after a while, as you can see in this slide, everything typically moved down into the sac. So it was a kind of a failure. Company tried to change a little bit the indication. They were much more, they refined the extraction for use, so more simple anatomy, no complex, no tuberosity, no short neck. But again, the result was not very nice, and this endograft moved down all the time. And so, as you can see in this picture, and the point is that in 2019, the company voluntarily recalled the device, CE mark was suspended, then was reinstated, but at that moment it's only as an investigational device or for compassionate use and sometimes. So the idea for my personal opinion is that this endograft, the polymer is not the point. The polymer was good. So the polymer technology did not fail. It was the design of the stent and the lack of an active fixation, like hooks or barbs, to have everything correctly in place. And then the point is that for every kind of endograft, you should respect instruction for use, otherwise you can have a very disappointing result. And just one word in favor of the use of this endograft, just when you have to rely on a previous Nelix with a chimney EVAS, which is the example in this picture on your right. And this is nice because you can have a very stable organization of your chimney, but something has to improve definitely. While the other option based on polymer works very nicely is the Ovation device. Ovation, the first prototype was back in 2007, then the Ovation one by Trivascular was in Europe approved in 2010, then Endologics acquired the device, and now we have the third generation of that device called Ovation Alto. We have the Ovation Prime, Ovation AX, and now the new Ovation Alto. It's a low profile endograft, only 40, 15 French, but there are so many things to talk about this endograft, not only the profile. It's a different sealing concept, respect the traditional self-expanding endograft. Sealing concept is totally different. It's based on the ring at proximal neck, which is filled of polymer and create a customized sealing. So it's a circumferential sealing. This is the main difference. Self-expanding, traditional self-expanding endograft look for a longitudinal sealing. Here we just want a circumferential sealing. So we have to rethink a little bit about the neck of our AAA, of abdominal aortic aneurysm, and that is the point. On your left, you see, this is a traditional self-expanding stent. For this kind of endograft that works very nicely in select cases, you need the length. You need a 10 millimeter, 15 millimeter of length of your proximal neck in triple A treatment. While with this endograph, you just need a circumferential wall apposition. So it's just 1 millimeter what you need. And this is quite provocative, but you know that this technology, the O-ring technology, works very properly inside your syringe, while I can imagine that this kind of self-expanding stent graft cannot provide the same activity that this O-ring do into a syringe, just because the sealing is different. And this is a typical example of what you can do with this endograph. You can treat conical shaped neck. That means where you have no parallel wall, and what you need is just to have a complete circumferential wall apposition at the level of the neck, and the result in this multi-planar reconstruction you see here, the ring is nicely touching the aortic wall just in one point, but it's circumferential sealing. So this is why it works so well, because it's a very uniform and circumferential sealing at that level. Low profile. Low profile is another main advantage of this endograph. It's only 40 French or 50 French with the new Ovation Alto, which is much less than other endograph. In other words, you can increase, you can expand the indication even to female or people with a small access. And it's not only a point of profile, it's also a point of trackability of the device. This device is very flexible. It's not only small, it's not only low profile, it's flexible. You can see here on your left, you can go through this very tortuous anatomy nicely without any need for conduits or other solution, because it's very trackable and low profile, even through very severe kinked, calcified iliac access. And then the iliac limb design and behavior is again very different from other endografts, because it's just PTA and one single nitinol wire in an helical architecture, and this provides with no suture. That's another big difference. You don't have crown of stent sutured to the fabric. You have just one nitinol wire, which is electrostructured to the fabric, and that means that as you can see in this endoscopic view, when you kink the limb, you never have this kind of luminal encroachment that you can have with different grafts. And this means that you can put your limbs even very low into kink the artery, and this, in my mind, is how to stabilize nicely an implantation, being very deep into the iliac, very close to the high bone, and so it's another good point to discuss. Then another nice point that this kind of technology is not providing any radial force against the proximal neck. That means that you expect less neck evolution, which is one of Achilles' heel with traditional self-expanding technology. We have deeply studied this point in a national registry that we published in JVS 2016 about neck evolution. What we studied and what we reported is that even after 2, 3, 4 years, we don't have any kind of particular neck enlargement, because the polymer is not pushing against the wall like traditional self-expanding stents do. And so we had no neck enlargement, no neck graft migration, and the conclusion is just that you can expect less neck evolution over the years, and so this is another good point. And then the last generation of Ovation is Ovation Alto, which arrived in Europe in October 2020, even in your country this year, and this is provided with a neck which is much closer to the renals. That means that you can treat even a shorter neck. Now the sealing is just at 7 millimeter, and you still you have an incorporated balloon during the deployment that just can even better customize the shape of the ring against the aortic wall, and in this way you can treat even more challenging anatomies, hostile, large reverse tape on conical neck. The main difference is that the shorter the colored zone, that means the zone of fabric above the ring. Now it was 30 millimeter, now it's only 7. They also did some differences in the length of the limbs and in between the connection of them. In this way, what we can do now is to treat even juxtarenal aneurysm, that means aneurysm with a very short neck. The high view for that endograft now is neck of just 7 millimeter, and this is my first case that I performed in October 2020 in my center with Ovation Alto. You can see here the 3D reconstruction after 3 months with the ring very close to the renals and with a nice patency of the renal arteries. This is another case that actually is completely outside the eye view for any other traditional endograft. Of course, you should treat these patients with a more complex technology, that means fenestrated or branch device. We of course have access to that kind of technology, but we have a couple of problems in these patients. That was a symptomatic huge aneurysm. You can see more than 9 centimeter aneurysm, and with a very bad iliac artery access, calcified kink, which is a main limitation for the fenestrated technology. You cannot easily orientate your fenestration, and you need time to customize this endograft. While with Ovation, even such a short neck of only 8-9 millimeter can be treated inside the hyphal, and these are the intro view before the deployment and just after the deployment. You can see here that we were able to put the ring just at the level of this very short neck, and we have a very nice circumferential wall apposition of the ring just because of the polymer at that level. And then last case, which is another nice, actually is my last case performed in my center last week, which just give an overview of sometimes how even adjunctive tool can help a lot in expanding indication for patients. You know, we have patients with renal failure. Those patients are typically denied to EVAR, to endovascular treatment, just because of the use of contrast, while sometimes combining technology we can expand indication. This is the case of a patient with renal failure. So what we did was just a CT without contrast, and then we use Ovation with CO2 contrast, with carbon dioxide contrast. And this is how you can obtain, even with a CT without contrast, you can obtain important measure of the aneurysm. And then this is the use of AngioDroid, the machine which is able to give you CO2 contrast angiography. Actually, you use for AAA treatment, but even for any other peripheral arterial disease, even more, because we know that renal failure is much more associated with CLI, with chronic limb ischemia. But this is how it works even in aortic procedure. You see here the visualization of the aneurysm sac with CO2, the implantation of the Alto, and the final result. Of course, these are where we want to deploy the limb. Nice visualization of the hypogastric artery. Again, a nice deployment of the endograft from the renal to the hypo, covering on the length of the aorta and the iliac. And this is the final view with just with the CO2, and you can see that the aneurysm sac is completely sealed, and the patients had the procedure with zero contrast at that point. And now we are running a trial in Italy just to see the safety and the result and the effectiveness of Ovation Alto. This is Altair, Alto Endograph Italian Registry, and probably next year maybe I can give you more detail. We are just started this month, so it's very heavy. So my conclusion, with this endograph, I believe we can really expand indication of EVAR, of endovascular treatment of abdominal aortic aneurysm. There is no chronic outward radial force against the proximal neck. That means that the neck is protected over the year, and you cannot expect neck enlargement. There is a continuous wall apposition, even of the ring, even in an irregular conical neck. And so, in other words, you can treat short and complex neck. And remember, the IFU for this endograph is always 7 millimeter to the lowest renal artery of neck. And then there is all the advantage of low profile with a good trackability of the device. Thank you for your attention.